I want to ask you about Trump's first major visit to Asia on the first anniversary of his election. What message and vibe about America is he taking around the rest of the world, especially compared to what Obama did?
Well, they have fundamentally different views. It's just speaking about Asia, his decision to withdraw from the TPP was a gift to China. Ironically, he campaigned on getting tough on China. He's been the best gift China could receive. So I think around most of Asia, there is a sense of American withdrawal that has opened up an opportunity for the Chinese. Obviously, everyone's watching with interest how he deals with North Korea.
Well, I was going to ask you, because what we understand, although I'm not sure that it's ever been actually confirmed publicly, was that President Obama warned President Trump that actually this would be his biggest challenge, just as Obama was warned that Iran would be a biggest challenge.
Yes.
Is that true?
Well, I think it is true, and I think it was right. The fact is that North Korea has thwarted president after president of both parties, and their nuclear program has proceeded apace. And they're really, despite the menacing of the president, there aren't a lot of great options because any military action invites retaliatory strikes on South Korea, on Japan, that could jeopardize millions of people.
I mean, it's obviously a massively important trip for that reason. And everybody presumably wishes the president well, because it's an existential threat to the globe. But I guess part of it is also complicated by the president's disregard for the Iran nuclear accord and the potential risk he's putting that at.
Well, if you want to bring people to the negotiating table, then you have to live by the agreements that you make. The signals that he's sending relative to Iran are being monitored by the North Koreans, and they have to ask themselves the question, if we sign an agreement, what exactly will it mean? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the president sees all of these things as part of a larger puzzle. Some of his aides may, but he doesn't seem to. And his menacing of Kim Jong-un plays well, particularly with his base back home. How it's interpreted by the North Koreans, I think, is a different question, and that's the great risk, the risk of miscalculation.
So let's talk about his base, because this week was the first anniversary of the election, and there was an election, an important one in the United States. Clearly, you must be thrilled, vindicated about the election results in the United States.
Yeah, well, I look at it more clinically now because in my role at CNN and at the University of Chicago, I try and look at things a little more clinically. But from a Democratic standpoint, there's no doubt that this was a very, very strong election, and it seems to be a message election. It doesn't seem that this was isolated to Virginia, for example, where Democrats won a huge victory, but in all the races around the country, and there were some isolated races all over the country, Democrats won largely on the strength of an energized Democratic base, and particularly in suburban areas where a lot of the key elections are going to take place in 2018. So if you're a Republican, you have to be deeply concerned about the signals this election sent.
What about people who are saying, well, what does the Democratic Party stand for? What is the Democratic Party's message today? Only 37% in July said the party stands for something, whereas 52% said it just stands against Trump. Is that a real weakness and a threat for your party?
Well, it's very hard for legislative parties to develop a message, a unified message, because we're a big, diverse country. People run on their own messages. I think there is an overarching sense of resistance to Trump that unifies Democrats. There's debates within the Democratic Party. There's a more populist wing of the Democratic Party. There's a more of an establishment wing. But the gulf between those two wings is less dramatic than what you find in the Republican Party today. But there's no doubt that the Democratic Party is not going to really be defined until there's a presidential candidate to define them. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way it'll be in these next few years.
Okay, let's get back to Trump and Obama. This is what President Trump said shortly after he was inaugurated about the Obama administration.
I inherited a mess. It's a mess. At home and abroad, a mess. Jobs are pouring out of the country. You see what's going on with all of the companies leaving our country, going to Mexico and other places. Low pay, low wages, mass instability overseas, no matter where you look. The Middle East, a disaster. North Korea, we'll take care of it, folks. We're going to take care of it all. I just want to let you know, I inherited a mess.
So he inherited a mess.
So he says.
It looks like he wants to do anything but Obama. But his people say, no, that's not what motivates President Trump. It's not just about undoing President Obama's legacy. How do you see it?
Well, first of all, let me just say, we would have gladly traded the mess that Donald Trump inherited for the mess that Barack Obama inherited when he became president in the midst of the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, with 2 wars raging, 180,000 American troops engaged in active combat situations overseas. So objectively, things were much better when Trump took office. But I don't think he really I don't think he expected to be elected president. I don't think he brought a governing philosophy. I think he basically is influenced by how he is playing in any given moment. And if something looks like it can appeal particularly to his political base, he pursues that. Yes, I think he is motivated by his desire to sully Obama's reputation. I think he resents that Obama left as a very popular president and he entered as an unpopular president, more unpopular today. So anything that Obama was involved in, he seems to want to undo.
But these are really important issues like Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act,
yes,
like the Paris Climate Accord, and we just talked about the Iran nuclear deal. Really significant, globally important and domestically important.
And this is the concern because he views them as political theater and political opportunities. There are real substantive policy implications of all of these things. You know, I think his aides have slowed him on Iran. He took a sort of halfway measure there. Now it's in Congress's lap, but he hasn't withdrawn from the agreement yet. That would have enormous implications. The Affordable Care Act he tried to undo, and he's trying to strangle it through administrative procedures, but it's quite popular now with the public.
And talking about Obama, I just want to play this little snippet of what he said during a campaign event for Ralph Northam in Virginia.
You notice I haven't been commenting a lot on politics lately, but here's one thing I know. If you have to win a campaign by dividing people, you're not going to be able to govern them. We need you to take this seriously because our democracy is at stake.
So democracy is at stake, says the president, former president.
Well, look, I think there are challenges to democracy all over the world right now, particularly in developed nations where technology, globalization have created winners and losers, and social media is pervasive and organizes people by tribe. These are challenges for democracy, and there's no doubt that Donald Trump got elected president by mining those divisions, mining those differences, and still does as president. That is not helpful to democracy.
David Axelrod, thanks so much for joining us.
Always good to be with you.